Rain drummed relentlessly against the tin roof of the small cabin at the edge of Pine Hollow. Inside, Emma's hands shook as she watched 4 German shepherds huddled in the corner, their fur matted, eyes wide with fear. She had stumbled across them days ago, trapped in a ravine after a storm, and somehow, against all odds, she'd saved them. Now, years later, the memory of that night still haunted her, a quiet whisper that she had saved more than 4 dogs. She didn't know the full cost, or the debt that had silently begun. If you enjoy stories that grip the heart and linger long after the last page, feel free to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. The morning fog clung to the ridges of Pine Hollow like a stubborn ghost. Emma pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders, her boots squelching in the damp undergrowth. The small town lay quiet, its streets slick with rain from the previous night, and the only sound was the occasional clatter of a loose shutter in the wind. People didn't leave their homes much in the early hours, and Emma preferred it that way. Solitude gave her a kind of clarity, a way to think without the noise of whispers and judgment. Her cabin sat on the far edge of the hollow, perched above a narrow, jagged ravine that had swallowed more than a few unwary hikers over the years. Emma had grown up hearing the stories. Lost hunters, children who wandered too far, hikers who vanished without a trace. But she had never thought she'd find herself tangled in one of those stories until the day she discovered them. 4 German shepherds. Not stray, not feral. Someone had trained them, and yet they were trapped, their legs twisted in mud, limbs bruised and bleeding from the fall. The storm had washed away the fragile bridge that had carried them into the ravine, leaving only chaos, mud, and fear. Emma hadn't hesitated. She had lowered ropes, braved the unstable dirt, and dragged each dog, one by one, back to safety. When she finally collapsed, soaked, mud-slick, and trembling, she felt a strained connection with them, a debt neither human nor animal fully understood. Years had passed since that night, but the memory of their eyes, wide, trusting, terrified, never left her. Now, in the quiet morning fog, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was stirring in the hollow, something tied to that night. Emma stepped into her cabin, dripping water onto the worn wooden floor. The fire in the hearth was long cold, and she cursed under her breath. The town had been shifting too quickly for her liking. New houses, new roads, new faces that didn't belong. Most of the locals whispered about her. The solitary girl who talked to animals more than people, who lived too close to the edge of the hollow, who knew too much about its secrets. She didn't care. People didn't matter as much as survival, as understanding the quiet codes of the wild. Her phone buzzed. A message from the vet's office downtown. Emma, the shepherds are here. One of the owners wants to meet. ASAP. Her heart skipped. It had been years since she had saved them, years since she thought she would see them again. And yet, she had the instinctive sense that this wasn't a normal reunion. Something about the way the message had been written, clipped, urgent, set her nerves on edge. The drive into town was treacherous. Rain-slick roads twisted through the hollow, like veins of silver under the pale morning light. She kept thinking about the first time she had seen those dogs, how small and helpless they had been, how much fear clung to their fur like frost. She had been just a girl, barely 16, and yet she had acted without hesitation. Why had she done it? Because she couldn't leave them? Because she wanted to prove to herself that she could do something right in a world that had never seemed fair? She didn't know. Maybe it was both. The vet's office smelled of antiseptic and wet fur. Behind the counter, the receptionist gave her a wary look. Emma? They're in the back. The owners are here. Emma nodded, her stomach tightening. She walked past the rows of cages and toward the back, where the office door was slightly ajar. And then she saw them. 4 German shepherds, older now. Their fur glossy and strong, eyes sharp and alert, but unmistakably theirs. And next to them, a man she didn't recognize, mid-40s tall, shoulders tense, eyes darting like a cornered animal. Beside him, a woman whose expression flickered between relief and something darker, suspicion maybe, or fear. Emma, the man said, voice low, cautious. We wanted to thank you. Properly. The word sounded simple, almost polite, but Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something in his tone, a hesitancy, as if he were measuring her reaction, testing the ground. She stayed quiet, letting him speak first. "They've changed," the woman added. "Since you saved them. They've been protecting us." Emma blinked. "Protecting you?" Her mind raced. Images of the dogs trapped in the ravine, their fur slick with mud, their eyes wide and terrified. They were just animals. Loyal, yes, but protective in a supernatural way? That made no sense. The man leaned closer, his voice dropping. "You have no idea what you set in motion when you saved them. Back then, they were just scared. But now they remember. They know." Emma felt the blood drain for her face. "Know what?" The woman exchanged a quick glance with the man, then nodded toward the door at the far end of the office. Through the glass, Emma could see movement in the street. Shadows flitting across the wet asphalt, too fast, too calculated. "They know about the hollow," the man said quietly, "and they're making sure we survive it." Emma swallowed hard. The hollow, that jagged, unforgiving strip of land that had swallowed so many secrets. Something inside her shifted, a cold knot of fear and anticipation. The shepherds watched her, ears perked, muscles coiled, and for a heartbeat, she saw the memory of that night. The terror, the mud, the fear, and realized she hadn't just saved them. They had saved something in her, too. Something primal. Something that now, years later, demanded repayment. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. "Trust no one. Not even those you call friends. They're coming." Emma's fingers trembled. She looked at the 4 dogs, Max, Titan, Shadow, and Luna, each poised like statues, their eyes fixed on her in a way that was unervingly human. She took a deep breath, grounding herself. If she had learned anything over the years, it was that fear was a weapon, but action was stronger. She whispered their names softly, one by one, and felt their subtle, reassuring nudge against her legs. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. The vet's office door slammed in the wind outside, rattling the panes, and Emma realized that this reunion, this moment of gratitude, was only the beginning. Something far larger, far darker, had been set in motion the night she saved them. And now, years later, the Hollow was awakening. The Hollow never slept. At least, not the way most people thought of sleep. Even when the fog thickened and the town seemed blanketed in quiet, something whispered through the trees, a low, persistent hum that could set nerves on edge without warning. Emma had driven back to her cabin. The 4 shepherds riding silently in the back of her truck, paws tucked neatly, eyes alert. Each time her headlights cut through the fog, she caught glimpses of movement, shapes at the edge of the road that disappeared the moment she focused on them. She parked and stepped out, boots sinking into the soft mud, the familiar scent of wet pine needles and earth filling her senses. The dogs jumped out as one, a fluid, practiced motion that betrayed years of disciplined training. Their eyes swept the surrounding forest, muscles tense, as if anticipating an attack. Emma rubbed the bridge of her nose and muttered, "You've gotten a little intense over the years, haven't you?" Shadow, the largest of the 4, nudged her hand with a wet nose. Titan barked softly, scanning the trees above. Max remained silent, sitting like a statue at her feet, while Luna padded quietly to the edge of the porch, tail low, ears flicking at every sound. They were calm yet alert, obedient yet unervingly aware of threats Emma could not perceive. Inside the cabin, she set their food down, watching as they ate with methodical precision. Emma poured herself a cup of tea and tried to calm the storm of thoughts in her head. Whoever had sent that cryptic text, "Trust no one, not even those you call friends. They're coming," had not been joking. Her pulse quickened as she remembered the way the vet's office had felt. Tense, clipped, full of unspoken danger. The man and woman who claimed to own the shepherds now? Something about them had felt off. A knock on the door startled her. Emma tensed and glanced at the dogs. Titan growled softly, a low rumble that reverberated in her chest. "Stay," she whispered. But her voice didn't seem to reach them the way it used to. They already knew she would let whoever it was in. She opened the door to see a figure silhouetted against the fog. Deputy Harris, one of the few locals she actually trusted. His uniform was soaked, and the brim of his hat dripped water onto the porch. "Evening, Emma," he said, voice tight. "We need to talk." Emma stepped aside. "Come in. It's complicated." He followed her into the cabin, eyes flicking to the 4 dogs. "I can see they remember you," he said. "I've never seen animals respond the way they did at the vet. You need to be careful. People are looking for them and for you." Emma froze. "Looking for us? Why?" Harris shook his head. "I don't know everything, but the Hollow doesn't forget, and neither do some of the people around here. You've stirred things, dangerous things." Her stomach knotted. She thought back to the first day she had rescued the shepherds. The mud, the rain, the edge of the ravine. It had seemed like a simple act of compassion. Simple until now. The shadows in the Hollow were not just trees and fog. They were people. People who kept old scores, grudges, and secrets buried deep. And somehow, the dogs had become enmeshed in all of it. Hours passed, the rain hammering the roof, and the dogs remained vigilant. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching from beyond the tree line, just out of sight. Then the power flickered. Lights dimmed. A cold draft swept through the cabin. Shadow barked, sharp and sudden, and the hairs on Emma's neck stood on end. Harris grabbed a flashlight. "We should check the perimeter," he said. Emma nodded reluctantly, gripping a baseball bat she kept near the door. The fog was thick, dampening sound and vision, but the dogs led the way, silent, fluid, eyes cutting through the gray like blades. They moved as if they knew the Hollow better than anyone, better than any map, better than any human. Then she saw it. Footprints in the mud, too large, too deliberate. Someone had been here recently. Emma's throat went dry. "They're close," she whispered. A rustle in the trees to the east made Titan growl. Emma spun, bat raised, and saw a figure dart between the trunks. Shadow lunged forward, low to the ground, teeth bared, but the figure disappeared, swallowed by fog. Harris cursed under his breath. "They're testing you, watching you." Emma's mind raced. She remembered a cryptic text, the clipped words, the tension at the vet's office. Someone, maybe several someones, wanted the dogs. And if they could take the dogs, they could reach her. The night grew heavier, darker, the fog pressing close like a living thing. The 4 shepherds patrolled the perimeter with eerie coordination, moving silently but deliberately, cutting off paths, corralling the unseen intruders into shadows where they couldn't strike. Emma felt a strange swell of gratitude and awe. They remembered more than she had expected. Hours later, the knock came again. This time, multiple knocks, sharp, urgent, unrelenting. The dogs stiffened, and Emma felt the weight of inevitability pressing on her chest. Harris motioned for her to stay back. The door shook, and then suddenly it splintered. Chaos erupted. Shadows moved in the fog, boots pounding, voices shouting orders. But the dogs were ready. Titan barreled forward, teeth flashing. Shadow followed, leaping with precise timing, jaw snapping. Max and Luna flanked the rear, cutting off escape. Emma found herself thrown to the floor as bodies collided with the doorframe. Through the cacophony, she heard whispers, low, threatening, "Get the girl. Get the dogs. No witnesses." Emma scrambled to her feet, heart hammering. The dogs moved around her with unnerving intelligence, corralling the attackers, herding them back into the fog where they stumbled and fell. It was like watching a single organism, 4 bodies moving as one, anticipating every move. Finally, silence. Breathing ragged, hearts pounding, Emma looked around. No one remained in sight, just the fog, the rain, and the soft rustle of the Hollow. The dogs returned to her side, calm, obedient, as if nothing had happened. Yet Emma knew the truth. This was only the beginning. Harris knelt beside her, voice low. "They saved us, and they'll save you again if you need it. But they're different now, smarter, stronger. Somehow they remember everything." Emma sank into a chair, trembling. She stared at the 4 shepherds, eyes wide, realizing the depth of the bond that had formed that night in the ravine. They had paid her back in ways she couldn't yet comprehend, in ways that would soon become terrifyingly clear. The Hollow was waking, and Emma knew, with a cold certainty, that she could no longer run for what she had set in motion. The night pressed on, heavy and unrelenting, and the 4 German shepherds sat like statues, eyes fixed on the darkened tree-line. Emma whispered their names again, Max, Titan, Shadow, Luna, and felt their silent promise. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The hollow felt alive in a way Emma had never imagined. Fog slithered between the trees like fingers, brushing against the wet bark and carrying the faint scent of smoke and earth. Every step she took toward the old mill at the center of the hollow seemed to echo, and the 4 German shepherds moved around her in perfect synchrony, silent, alert, their eyes never leaving the shadows. She didn't know who had orchestrated the attacks, only that someone wanted the dogs, and through them, her. The man and woman from the vet's office had been too controlled, too careful with their words. And Harris, though loyal, was only a single human against forces that seemed to manipulate even the land itself. Emma's hand trembled as she reached the mill. Its structure groaned under the weight of years, abandoned and forgotten, yet somehow still imposing. The hollowed windows reflected her anxious face, fragmented by streaks of fog. Something inside her told her that tonight would change everything. For her, for the dogs, for anyone who had underestimated the bond between a girl and the creatures she had saved. Then she saw him, a figure at the far end of the mill, tall, dark, and calm, as if he had been waiting for her all along. The man from the vet's office stepped forward, his eyes cold now, unmasked. "You shouldn't have interfered," he said, voice like gravel. "They were meant to be ours." Emma's stomach turned. She had assumed that the man and woman were harmless, proprietors, grateful owners. But now she understood. They were hunters, traders of rare, highly trained dogs. And the 4 shepherds had disrupted a plan that would have trapped them forever, turning the debt owed into a danger Emma hadn't anticipated. The dogs moved instinctively. Shadow growled, low and threatening, ears flattened. Titan stepped forward, teeth bared. Max and Luna flanked Emma, protective shields of fur and muscle. "You don't understand," Emma said, keeping her voice steady. "They're not property. They're alive. They choose loyalty, not chains." The man sneered. "Choice is irrelevant. You saved them once, foolishly, but debts have consequences, and now you must pay yours." Emma's chest tightened. She realized what he meant. By saving the dogs, she had created a bond stronger than any leash, and now they had chosen her. The shepherds knew her heart, her fears, her courage, and in return, they would defend her, without question, without hesitation. The man lunged forward, knife glinting in the dim light. Shadow intercepted him, jaws clamping around his wrist. Titan followed, knocking him to the ground with the weight of his body. Max and Luna circled the intruder, cutting off escape. Emma froze, heart pounding, as she watched the 4 dogs execute maneuvers she had never taught them, yet instinctively understood. Protective, precise, intelligent beyond ordinary comprehension. The man scrambled backward, blood trickling from a cut on his hand. Emma stepped forward, holding the bat tightly. "Leave," she said, voice firm, "or the hollow won't let you." He froze. Something flickered in his eyes. Fear, disbelief, maybe respect. Then, slowly, he nodded, retreating into the fog with the woman at his side. The hollow swallowed them, leaving nothing but the sound of rain and the distant whisper of the trees. Emma sank to the ground, trembling, and the dogs gathered around her. They nudged her, licked her hands, and rested their heads against her knees. She realized that their actions were more than protection. They had understood the danger, assessed it, and acted with loyalty and intelligence that went beyond instinct. They had returned her act of kindness in a way that no human could. Harris arrived moments later, breathless from the run. "Are you okay?" he asked, eyes scanning the fog. Emma nodded, unable to speak. Her hands rested on the dogs' heads, feeling the warmth, the steady pulse, the life she had saved years ago and had now returned tenfold. As dawn broke over the hollow, the fog began to lift. Light spilled through the trees, casting long, golden shafts onto the damp forest floor. The storm had passed. The threat had receded, at least for now. Emma looked at the 4 shepherds and smiled, a fragile, exhausted smile. "I guess you'll always be my guardians, huh?" she whispered. The dogs responded with soft whines, tails sweeping the floor, eyes bright and alive. They were more than pets. They were companions, saviors, and reminders that courage and compassion could create bonds that no darkness could sever. In the quiet that followed, Emma understood something profound. Debts of kindness were not always about repayment in the human sense. Sometimes, they were answered in ways that transcended reason, in loyalty that surpassed fear, in love that could protect, heal, and endure beyond the boundaries of life itself. The hollow was still alive and beautiful in its own haunted way. Emma rose, brushing mud from her jeans, and watched the 4 dogs move ahead, sniffing the forest floor, alert but calm. She knew this was only the beginning of their life together, a life where trust, courage, and love would always be the currency. And in that moment, amidst the whispering trees, the scent of wet earth, and the golden light of the rising sun, Emma felt a quiet, unshakable peace. The dogs had returned the favor, not with possessions, not with obedience, but with something far greater, unwavering loyalty, protection, and the knowledge that sometimes saving a life could save more than just one. She smiled softly, and for the first time in years, allowed herself to believe in the power of bonds that even the darkest forces could not break.